Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, translated by George Long. Book 1. Of my grandfather Varus, I have learned to be gentle and meek, and to refrain from all anger and passion. From the fame and memory of him that begot me, I have learned both shamefastness and manlike behavior. Of my mother, I have learned to be religious and bountiful, and to forbear not only to do, but to intend any evil, to content myself with a spare diet, and to fly all such excess as is incidental to great wealth. Of my great-grandfather, both to frequent public schools and auditories, and to get me good and able teachers at home, and that I ought not to think much if upon such occasions I were at excessive charges. Of him that brought me up, not to be fondly addicted to either of the two great factions of the coursers in the circus, called Presindi and Veneti, nor in the amphitheatre partially to favor any of the gladiators or fencers, as either the Parmulari or the Secutores. Moreover, to endure labor, nor to need many things. When I have anything to do it myself rather than by others, not to meddle with many businesses, and not easily to admit of any slander.
Of Diognetus, not to busy myself about vain things, and not easily to believe those things which are commonly spoken by such as take upon them to work wonders, and by sorcerers, or prestidigitators, and impostors, concerning the power of charms, and their driving out of demons, or evil spirits, and the like. Not to keep quails for the game, nor to be mad after such things. Not to be offended with other men's liberty of speech, and to apply myself unto philosophy. Him also I must thank, that ever I heard first Bacchius, then Tandaces, and Marcianus, and that I did write dialogues in my youth, and that I took liking to the philosopher's little couch and skins, and such other things, which by the Grecian discipline are proper to those who profess philosophy. To Rusticus I am beholding, that I first entered into the conceit that my life wanted some redress and cure, and then that I did not fall into the ambition of ordinary sophists, either to write tracts concerning the common theorems, or to exhort men unto virtue and the study of philosophy by public orations, as also that I never by way of ostentation did affect to show myself an active able man for any kind of bodily exercises, and that I gave over the study of rhetoric and poetry, and of elegant, neat language, that I did not use to walk about the house in my long robe, nor to do any such things.
Moreover, I learned of him to write letters without any affectation or curiosity, such as that was which by him was written to my mother from Sinuessa, and to be easy and ready to be reconciled, and well pleased again with them that had offended me, as soon as any of them would be content to seek unto me again. To read with diligence, not to rest satisfied with a light and superficial knowledge, nor quickly to assent to things commonly spoken of, whom also I must thank that ever I lighted upon Epictetus his Hippomnemata, or moral commentaries and common factions, which also he gave me of his own. From Apollonius, to liberty and unvariable steadfastness, and not to regard anything at all, though never so little, but right and reason, and always, whether in the sharpest pains, or after the loss of a child, or in long diseases, to be still the same man, who also was a present and visible example unto me, that it was possible for the same man to be both vehement and remiss, a man not subject to be vexed and offended with the incapacity of his scholars and auditors in his lectures and expositions, and a true pattern of a man who of all his good gifts and faculties least esteemed in himself, that his excellent skill and ability to teach and persuade others the common theorems and maxims of the Stoic philosophy.
Of him also I learned how to receive favors and kindnesses, as commonly they are accounted, from friends, so that I might not become obnoxious unto them, for them, nor more yielding upon occasion than in right I ought, and yet so that I should not pass them either as an unsensible and unthankful man. Of Sextus, mildness, and the pattern of a family governed with paternal affection, and a purpose to live according to nature, to be grave without affectation, to observe carefully the several dispositions of my friends, not to be offended with idiots, nor unseasonably to set upon those that are carried with the vulgar opinions, with the theorems and tenets of philosophers, his conversation being an example how a man might accommodate himself to all men and companies, so that though his company were sweeter and more pleasing than any flatterer's cogging and fawning, yet was it at the same time most respected and reverenced, who also had a proper happiness and faculty,
rationally and methodically to find out and set in order all necessary determinations and instructions for a man's life.
A man without ever the least appearance of anger or any other passion, able at the same time most exactly to observe the Stoic apatheia or unpassionateness, and yet to be most tender-hearted, ever of good credit, and yet almost without any noise or rumor, very learned, and yet making little show. From Alexander the grammarian, to be unreprovable myself, and not reproachfully to reprehend any man for a barbarism or a solecism, or any false pronunciation, but dexterously by way of answer, or testimony, or confirmation of the same matter, taking no notice of the word, to utter it as it should have been spoken, or by some other such close and indirect admonition, handsomely and civilly to tell him of it. Of Fronto, to how much envy and fraud and hypocrisy the state of a tyrannous king is subject unto, and how they who are commonly called eupatridae, that is, nobly born, are in some sort incapable or void of natural affection. Of Alexander the Platonic, not often nor without great necessity to say or to write to any man in a letter, I am not at leisure, nor in this manner still to put off those duties which we owe to our friends and acquaintances, to everyone in his kind, under pretense of urgent affairs.
Of Catullus, not to contemn any friend's expostulation, though unjust, but to strive to reduce him to his former disposition, freely and heartily to speak well of all my masters upon any occasion, as it is reported of Domitius and Athenodotus, and to love my children with true affection. From my brother Severus, to be kind and loving to all them of my house and family, by whom also I came to the knowledge of Thracia and Helvidius, and Cato, and Dio, and Brutus. He it was also that did put me in the first conceit and desire of an equal commonwealth, administered by justice and equality, and of a kingdom wherein should be regarded nothing more than the good and welfare of the subjects. Of him also to observe a constant tenor, not interrupted with any other cares and distractions, in the study and esteem of philosophy, to be bountiful and liberal in the largest measure, always to hope the best, and to be confident that my friends love me, in whom I moreover observed open dealing towards those whom he reproved at any time, and that his friends might without all doubt or much observation know what he would or would not, so open and plain was he. From Claudius Maximus, in all things to endeavor to have power of myself, and in nothing to be carried about, to be cheerful and courageous in all sudden chances and accidents, as in sicknesses, to love mildness and moderation and gravity, and to do my business, whatsoever it be, thoroughly and without querulousness. Whatsoever he said, all men believed him that as he spoke, so he thought, and whatsoever he did, that he did it with a good intent. His manner was never to wonder at anything, never to be in haste, and yet never slow, nor to be perplexed or dejected, or at any time unseemly or excessively to laugh, nor to be angry or suspicious, but ever ready to do good and to forgive and to speak truth, and all this as one that seemed rather of himself to have been straight and right, than ever to have been rectified or redressed. Neither was there any man that ever thought himself undervalued by him, or that could find in his heart to think himself a better man than he. He would also be very pleasant and gracious. In my father I observed his meekness, his constancy without wavering in those things which after a due examination and deliberation he had determined. How free from all vanity he carried himself in matter of honor and dignity, as they are esteemed, his laboriousness and assiduity, his readiness to hear any man that had aught to say tending to any common good, how generally and impartially he would give every man his due, his skill and knowledge, when rigor or extremity, or when remissness or moderation was in season, how he did abstain from all unchaste love of youths, his moderate condescending to other men's occasions, as an ordinary man, neither absolutely requiring of his friends that they should wait upon him at his ordinary meals, nor that they should of necessity accompany him in his journeys, and that whenever so any business upon some necessary occasions was to be put off and omitted before it could be ended, he was ever found when he went about it again the same man that he was before. His accurate examination of things and consultations, and patient hearing of others,
He would not hastily give over the search of the matter, as what easy to be satisfied with sudden notions and apprehensions. His care to preserve his friends, how neither at any time he would carry himself towards them with disdainful neglect, and grow weary of them, nor yet at any time be madly fond of them.
His contented mind in all things, his cheerful countenance, his care to foresee things afar off, and to take order for the least, without any noise or clamor. Moreover, how all acclamations and flattery were repressed by him, how carefully he observed all things necessary to the government, and kept an account of the common expenses, and how patiently he did abide that he was reprehended by some for this his strict and rigid kind of dealing. How he was neither a superstitious worshipper of the gods, nor an ambitious pleaser of men, or studious of popular applause, but sober in all things, and everywhere observant of that which was fitting, no affecter of novelties. In those things which conduced to his ease and convenience, plenty whereof his fortune did afford him, without pride and bragging, yet with all freedom and liberty, so that as he did freely enjoy them without any anxiety or affectation when they were present, so when absent he found no want of them. Moreover, that he was never commended by any man as either a learned acute man, or an obsequious officious man, or a fine orator, but as a ripe mature man, a perfect sound man, one that could not endure to be flattered, able to govern both himself and others.
Moreover, how much he did honor all true philosophers, without upbraiding those that were not so, his sociableness, his gracious and delightful conversation, but never unto satiety, his care of his body within bounds and measure, not as one that desired to live long, or over-studious of neatness and elegancy, and yet not as one that did not regard it, so that through his own care and providence he seldom needed any inward physic or outward applications, but especially how ingeniously he would yield to any that had obtained any peculiar faculty, as either eloquence, or the knowledge of the laws, or of ancient customs, or the like, and how he concurred with them in his best care and endeavor, that every one of them might in his kind, for that wherein he excelled, be regarded and esteemed. And although he did all things carefully after the ancient customs of his forefathers, yet even of this was he not desirous that men should take notice that he did imitate ancient customs. Again, how he was not easily moved and tossed up and down, but loved to be constant, both in the same places and businesses, and how after his great fits of headache he would return fresh and vigorous to his wonted affairs.
Again, that secrets he neither had many nor often, and such only as concerned public matters. His discretion and moderation in exhibiting of the public sights and shows for the pleasure and pastime of the people, in public buildings, congiaries, and the like. In all these things having a respect unto men only as men, and to the equity of the things themselves, and not unto the glory that might follow. Never wont to use the baths at unseasonable hours, no builder. Never curious or solicitous either about his meat, or about the workmanship or color of his clothes, or about anything that belonged to external beauty. In all his conversation far from all inhumanity, all boldness and incivility, all greediness and impetuity, never doing anything with such earnestness and intention that a man could say of him that he did sweat about it, but contrariwise all things distinctly as at leisure, without trouble, orderly, soundly, and agreeably. A man might have applied that to him which is recorded of Socrates, that he knew how to want and to enjoy those things, in the want whereof most men show themselves weak, and in the fruition intemperate, but to hold out firm and constant, and to keep within the compass of true moderation and sobriety in either estate, is proper to a man who hath a perfect and invincible soul, such as he showed himself in the sickness of Maximus.
From the gods I received that I had good grandfathers and parents, a good sister, good masters, good domestics, loving kinsmen, almost all that I have, and that I never through haste and rashness transgressed against any of them, notwithstanding that my disposition was such as that such a thing, if occasion had been, might very well have been committed by me, but that it was the mercy of the gods to prevent such a concurring of matters and occasions as might make me to incur this blame, that I was not long brought up by the concubine of my father, that I preserved the flower of my youth, that I took not upon me to be a man before my time, but rather put it off longer than I needed, that I lived under the government of my lord and father, who would take away from me all pride and vainglory, and reduce me to that conceit and opinion that it was not impossible for a prince to live in the court without a troop of guards and followers, extraordinary apparel, such and such torches and statues, and other like particulars of state and magnificence, but that a man may reduce and contract himself almost to the state of a private man, and yet for all that not to become the more base and remiss in those public matters and affairs wherein power and authority is requisite.
That I have had such a brother, who by his own example might stir me up to think of myself, and by his respect and love, delight and please me. That I have got ingenious children, and that they were not born distorted, nor with any other natural deformity. That I was no great proficient in the study of rhetoric and poetry, and of other faculties, which perchance I might have dwelt upon, if I had found myself to go on in them with success. That I did by times prefer those, by whom I was brought up, to such places and dignities which they seemed unto me most to desire, and that I did not put them off with hope and expectation, that since that they were yet but young, I would do the same hereafter. That I ever knew Apollonius and Rusticus and Maximus. That I have had occasion often and effectually to consider and meditate with myself concerning that life which is according to nature, what the nature and manner of it is, so that as for the gods and such suggestions, helps and inspirations as might be expected from them, nothing did hinder but that I might have begun long before to live according to nature, or that even now that I was not yet partaker and in present possession of that life, that I myself, in that I did not observe those inward motions and suggestions, yea, and almost plain and apparent instructions and admonitions of the gods, was the only cause of it. That my body in such a life hath been able to hold out so long, that I never had to do with Benedicta and Theodotus, yea, and afterwards when I fell into some fits of love, I was soon cured. That having been often displeased with Rusticus, I never did him anything for which afterwards I had occasion to repent. That it being so that my mother was to die young, yet she lived with me all her latter years. That as often as I had a purpose to help and succor any that either were poor or fallen into some present necessity, I never was answered by my officers that there was not ready money enough to do it, and that I myself never had occasion to require the like succor from any other. That I have such a wife, so obedient, so loving, so ingenious, that I had choice of fit and able men to whom I might commit the bringing up of my children. That by dreams I have received help, as for other things, so in particular, how I might stay my casting of blood, and cure my dizziness, as that also that happened to thee in Caieta, as unto Chryses, when he prayed by the seashore. And when I did first apply myself to philosophy, that I did not fall into the hands of some sophists, or spent my time either in reading the manifold volumes of ordinary philosophers, nor in practicing myself in the solution of arguments and fallacies, nor dwelt upon the studies of the meteors and other natural curiosities. All these things without the assistance of the gods and fortune could not have been. In the country of the Quadi, at Granua, these. Betimes in the morning say to thyself, this day I shall have to do with an idle, curious man, with an unthankful man, a railer, a crafty, false, or an envious man, an unsociable, uncharitable man. All these ill qualities have happened unto them through ignorance of that which is truly good and truly bad. But I that understand the nature of that which is good, that it only is to be desired, and of that which is bad, that it only is truly odious and shameful, who know moreover that this transgressor, whosoever he be, is my kinsman, not by the same blood and seed, but by participation of the same reason and of the same divine particle. How can I either be hurt by any of those, since it is not in their power to make me incur anything that is truly reproachful, or angry and ill-affected towards him, who by nature is so near unto me?
For we are all born to be fellow workers, as the feet, the hands, and the eyelids, as the rows of the upper and under teeth. For such therefore to be in opposition is against nature. And what is it to chafe at, and to be averse from, but to be in opposition? Whatsoever I am is either flesh or life, or that which we commonly call the mistress and overruling part of man, reason. Away with thy books, suffer not thy mind any more to be distracted, and carried to and fro, for it will not be. But as even now ready to die, think little of thy flesh, blood, bones, and a skin, a pretty piece of knit and twisted work, consisting of nerves, veins, and arteries. Think no more of it than so. And as for thy life, consider what it is, a wind, not one constant wind neither, but every moment of an hour let out and sucked in again. The third is thy ruling part. And here consider, thou art an old man. Suffer not that excellent part to be brought in subjection, and to become slavish. Suffer it not to be drawn up and down with unreasonable and unsociable lusts and motions, as it were with wires and nerves. Suffer it not any more, either to repine at anything now present, or to fear and fly anything to come, which the destiny hath appointed thee. Whatsoever proceeds from the gods immediately, that any man will grant totally depends from their divine providence.
As for those things that are commonly said to happen by fortune, even those must be conceived to have dependence from nature, or from that first and general connection, and concatenation of all those things, which more apparently by the divine providence are administered and brought to pass. All things flow from thence, and whatsoever it is that is both necessary and conducing to the whole, part of which thou art. And whatsoever it is that is requisite and necessary for the preservation of the general, must of necessity for every particular nature be good and beholful. And as for the whole, it is preserved, as by the perpetual mutation and conversion of the simple elements one into another, so also by the mutation and alteration of things mixed and compounded. Let these things suffice thee, let them be always unto thee as thy general rules and precepts. As for thy thirst after books, away with it with all speed, that thou die not murmuring and complaining, but truly meek and well satisfied, and from thy heart thankful unto the gods. Book 2. Remember how long thou hast already put off these things, and how often a certain day and hour, as it were having been set unto thee by the gods, thou hast neglected it. It is high time for thee to understand the true nature both of the world whereof thou art a part, and of that Lord and Governor of the world, from whom, as a channel from the spring, thou thyself didst flow, and that there is but a certain limit of time appointed unto thee, which if thou shalt not make use of to calm and allay the many distempers of thy soul, it will pass away and thou with it, and never after return. Let it be thy earnest and incessant care as a Roman and a man to perform whatsoever it is that thou art about with true and unfeigned gravity, natural affection, freedom, and justice, and as for all other cares and imaginations, how thou mayest ease thy mind of them, which thou shalt do if thou shalt go about every action as thy last action, free from all vanity, all passionate and wilful aberration from reason, and from all hypocrisy and self-love, and dislike of those things which by the fates or appointment of God have happened unto thee. Thou seest that those things which for a man to hold on in a prosperous course and to live a divine life are requisite and necessary are not many, for the gods will require no more of any man that shall but keep and observe these things. Do so, do, abuse and contemn thyself, yet a while and the time for thee to respect thyself will be at an end.
Every man's happiness depends from himself. But behold, thy life is almost at an end, whiles affording thyself no respect, thou dost make thy happiness to consist in the souls and conceits of other men. Why should any of these things that happen externally so much distract thee? Give thyself leisure to learn some good thing, and cease roving and wandering to and fro. Thou must also take heed of another kind of wandering, for they are idle in their actions, who toil and labor in this life, and have no certain scope to which to direct all their motions and desires. For not observing the state of another man's soul, scarce was ever any man known to be unhappy. Tell whosoever they be that intend not, and guide not by reason and discretion the motions of their own souls, they must of necessity be unhappy. These things thou must always have in mind. What is the nature of the universe, and what is mine, in particular? This unto that, what relation it hath, what kind of part, of what kind of universe it is, and that there is nobody that can hinder thee, but that thou mayest always both do and speak those things which are agreeable to that nature whereof thou art a part.
Theophrastus, where he compares sin with sin, as after a vulgar sense such things I grant may be compared, says well and like a philosopher, that those sins are greater which are committed through lust than those which are committed through anger. For he that is angry seems with a kind of grief and close contraction of himself to turn away from reason. But he that sins through lust, being overcome by pleasure, doth in his very sin bewray a more impotent and unmanly disposition. Well then, and like a philosopher doth he say, that he of the two is the more to be condemned that sins with pleasure, than he that sins with grief. For indeed this latter may seem first to have been wronged, and so in some manner through grief thereof to have been forced to be angry, whereas he who through lust doth commit anything, did of himself merely resolve upon that action. Whatsoever thou dost effect, whatsoever thou dost project, so do and so project all, as one who, for aught thou knowest, may at this very present depart out of this life. And as for death, if there be any gods, it is no grievous thing to leave the society of men. The gods will do thee no hurt, thou mayest be sure. But if it be so that there be no gods, or that they take no care of the world, why should I desire to live in a world void of gods and of all divine providence?
But gods there be certainly, and they take care for the world. And as for those things which be truly evil, as vice and wickedness, such things they have put in a man's own power, that he might avoid them if he would. And had there been anything besides that had been truly bad and evil, they would have had a care of that also, that a man might have avoided it. But why should that be thought to hurt and prejudice a man's life in this world, which cannot anyways make man himself the better or the worse in his own person? Neither must we think that the nature of the universe did either through ignorance pass these things, or, if not as ignorant of them, yet as unable either to prevent or better to order and dispose them. It cannot be that she through want either of power or skill should have committed such a thing, so as to suffer all things, both good and bad, equally and promiscuously, to happen unto all, both good and bad. As for life, therefore, and death, honor and dishonor, labor and pleasure, riches and poverty, all these things happen unto men indeed, both good and bad, equally, but as things which of themselves are neither good nor bad, because of themselves neither shameful nor praiseworthy.
Consider how quickly all things are dissolved and resolved, the bodies and substances themselves into the matter and substance of the world, and their memories into the general age and time of the world. Consider the nature of all worldly sensible things, of those especially which either ensnare by pleasure, or for their irksomeness are dreadful, or for their outward luster and show are in great esteem and request, how vile and contemptible, how base and corruptible, how destitute of all true life and being they are. It is the part of a man endowed with a good understanding faculty to consider what they themselves are in very deed, from whose bare conceits and voices honor and credit do proceed, as also what it is to die, and how if a man shall consider this by itself alone, to die, and separate from it in his mind all those things which with it usually represent themselves unto us, he can conceive of it no otherwise than as of a work of nature. And he that fears any work of nature is a very child. Now death, it is not only a work of nature, but also conducing to nature. Consider with thyself how man, and by what part of his, is joined unto God, and how that part of man is affected when it is said to be diffused.
There is nothing more wretched than that soul, which in a kind of circuit compasseth all things, searching, as he saith, even the very depths of the earth, and by all signs and conjectures prying into the very thoughts of other men's souls, and yet of this is not sensible, that it is sufficient for a man to apply himself wholly, and to confine all his thoughts and cares to the tendance of that spirit which is within him, and truly and really to serve him. His service doth consist in this, that a man keep himself pure from all violent passion and evil affection, from all rashness and vanity, and from all manner of discontent, either in regard of the gods or men. For indeed whatever proceeds from the gods deserves respect for their worth and excellency, and whatever proceeds from men, as they are our kinsmen, should by us be entertained with love always, sometimes as proceeding from their ignorance of that which is truly good and bad,
a blindness no less than that by which we are not able to discern between white and black, with a kind of pity and compassion also. If thou should live 3,000, or as many as 10,000 of years, yet remember this, that man can part with no life properly, save with that little part of life which he now lives, and that which he lives is no other than that which at every instant he parts with.
That then which is longest of duration and that which is shortest come both to one effect. For although in regard of that which is already past there may be some inequality, yet that time which is now present and in being is equal unto all men. And that, being it which we part with whensoever we die, it doth manifestly appear that it can be but a moment of time that we then part with. For as for that which is either past or to come, a man cannot be said properly to part with it. For how should a man part with that which he hath not? These two things therefore thou must remember. First, that all things in the world from all eternity, by a perpetual revolution of the same times and things ever continued and renewed, are of one kind in nature, so that whether for 100 or 200 years only, or for an infinite space of time, a man see those things which are still the same, it can be no matter of great moment. And secondly, that life which any the longest liver or the shortest liver parts with, is for length and duration the very same. For that only which is present is that which either of them can lose, as being that only which they have. For that which he hath not, no man can truly be said to lose.
Remember that all is but opinion and conceit. For those things are plain and apparent, which were spoken unto Monimus the Cynic. And as plain and apparent is the use that may be made of those things, if that which is true and serious in them be received as well as that which is sweet and pleasing. A man's soul doth wrong and disrespect itself, first and especially, when as much as in itself lies, it becomes an apostemy, and as it were an excrescency of the world. For to be grieved and displeased with anything that happens in the world is direct apostasy from the nature of the universe, part of which all particular natures of the world are. Secondly, when she either is averse from any man, or led by contrary desires or affections, tending to his hurt and prejudice, such as are the souls of them that are angry. Thirdly, when she is overcome by any pleasure or pain. Fourthly, when she doth dissemble, and covertly and falsely either doth or says anything. Fifthly, when she doth either affect or endeavor anything to no certain end, but rashly and without due rationation and consideration, how consequent or inconsequent it is to the common end. For even the least things ought not to be done without relation unto the end. And the end of the rational creatures is to follow and obey him, who is the reason, as it were, and the law of this great city and ancient commonwealth.
The time of a man's life is as a point, the substance of it ever flowing, the sense obscure, and the whole composition of the body tending to corruption. His soul is restless, fortune uncertain, and fame doubtful. To be brief, as a stream, so are all things belonging to the body. As a dream or as a smoke, so are all that belong unto the soul. Our life is a warfare and a mere pilgrimage. Fame after life is no better than oblivion. What is it then that will adhere and follow? Only one thing, philosophy. And philosophy doth consist in this, for a man to preserve that spirit which is within him from all manner of contumelies and injuries, and above all pains or pleasures, never to do anything either rashly or feignedly or hypocritically, wholly to depend from himself and his own proper actions, all things that happen unto him to embrace contentedly, as coming from him from whom he himself also came, and above all things, with all meekness and a calm cheerfulness, to expect death, as being nothing else but the resolution of those elements of which every creature is composed. And if the elements themselves suffer nothing by this their perpetual conversion of one into another, that dissolution and alteration which is so common unto all, why should it be feared by any? Is not this according to nature? But nothing that is according to nature can be evil.
Whilst I was at Carnuntum, Book 3. A man must not only consider how daily his life wasteth and decreaseth, but this also, that if he live long, he cannot be certain whether his understanding shall continue so able and sufficient for either discreet consideration in matter of businesses, or for contemplation, it being the thing whereon true knowledge of things both divine and human doth depend. For if once he shall begin to dote, his respiration, nutrition, his imaginative and appetitive and other natural faculties may still continue the same. He shall find no want of them. But how to make that right use of himself that he should, how to observe exactly in all things that which is right and just, how to redress and rectify all wrong or sudden apprehensions and imaginations, and even of this particular, whether he should live any longer or no, to consider duly, for all such things, wherein the best strength and vigor of the mind is most requisite, his power and ability will be past and gone. Thou must hasten therefore, not only because thou art every day nearer unto death than other, but also because that intellective faculty in thee, whereby thou art enabled to know the true nature of things, and to order all thy actions by that knowledge, doth daily waste and decay, or may fail thee before thou die.
This also thou must observe, that whatsoever it is that naturally doth happen to things natural, hath somewhat in itself that is pleasing and delightful. As a great loaf when it is baked, some parts of it cleave as it were, and part asunder, and make the crust of it rugged and unequal. And yet those parts of it, though in some sort it be against the art and intention of baking itself, that they are thus cleft and parted, which should have been and were first made all even and uniform, they become it well nevertheless, and have a certain peculiar property to stir the appetite. So figs are accounted fairest and ripest then, when they begin to shrink and wither as it were. So ripe olives, when they are next to putrefaction, then are they in their proper beauty. The hanging down of grapes, the brow of a lion, the froth of a foaming wild boar, and many other like things, though by themselves considered they are far from any beauty, yet because they happen naturally, they both are comely and delightful. So that if a man shall with a profound mind and apprehension consider all things in the world, even among all those things which are but mere accessories and natural appendages as it were, there will scarce appear anything unto him, wherein he will not find matter of pleasure and delight.
So will he behold with as much pleasure the true rictus of wild beasts, as those which by skillful painters and other artificers are imitated. So will he be able to perceive the proper ripeness and beauty of old age, whether in man or woman. And whatsoever else it is that is beautiful and alluring in whatsoever is, with chaste and continent eyes he will soon find out and discern. Those and many other things will he discern, not credible unto everyone, but unto them only who are truly and familiarly acquainted, both with nature itself and all natural things. Hippocrates, having cured many sicknesses, fell sick himself and died. The Chaldeans and Astrologians, having foretold the deaths of divers, were afterwards themselves surprised by the fates. Alexander and Pompeius and Caius Caesar, having destroyed so many towns, and cut off in the field so many thousands both of horse and foot, yet they themselves at last were fain to part with their own lives. Heraclitus, having written so many natural tracts concerning the last and general conflagration of the world, died afterwards all filled with water within, and all deballed with dirt and dung without. Lice killed Democritus, and Socrates another sort of vermin, wicked, ungodly men. How then stands the case?
Thou hast taken ship, thou hast sailed, thou art come to land. Go out, if to another life, there also shalt thou find gods, who are everywhere. If all life and sense shall cease, then shalt thou cease also to be subject to either pains or pleasures, and to serve and tend this vile cottage, so much the viler by how much that which ministers unto it doth excel, the one being a rational substance and a spirit, the other nothing but earth and blood. Spend not the remnant of thy days in thoughts and fancies concerning other men, when it is not in relation to some common good, when by it thou art hindered from some other better work. That is, spend not thy time in thinking what such a man does and to what end, what he says and what he thinks and what he is about, and such other things or curiosities which make a man to rove and wander from the care and observation of that part of himself which is rational and overruling.
See, therefore, in the whole series and connection of thy thoughts, that thou be careful to prevent whatsoever is idle and impertinent, but especially whatsoever is curious and malicious. And thou must use thyself to think only of such things, of which if a man upon a sudden should ask thee what it is that thou art now thinking,
Thou mayest answer this and that, freely and boldly, that so by thy thoughts it may presently appear that in all thee is sincere and peaceable, as becometh one that is made for society, and regards not pleasures, nor gives way to any voluptuous imaginations at all, free from all contentiousness, envy, and suspicion, and from whatsoever else thou wouldest blush to confess thy thoughts were set upon.
He that is such, is he surely that doth not put off to lay hold on that which is best indeed, a very priest and minister of the gods, well acquainted and in good correspondence with him especially that is seated and placed within himself, as in a temple and sacrary, to whom also he keeps and preserves himself unspotted by pleasure, undaunted by pain, free from any manner of wrong or contumely by himself offered unto himself, not capable of any evil from others, a wrestler of the best sort, and for the highest prize, that he may not be cast down by any passion or affection of his own, deeply dyed and drenched in righteousness, embracing and accepting with his whole heart whatsoever either happeneth or is allotted unto him. One who not often, nor without some great necessity tending to some public good, mindeth what any other either speaks or does or purposes, for those things only that are in his own power, or that are truly his own, are the objects of his employments, and his thoughts are ever taken up with those things which of the whole universe are by the fates or providence destinated and appropriated unto himself. Those things that are his own and in his own power, he himself takes order for that they be good, and as for those that happen unto him, he believes them to be so.
For that lot and portion which is assigned to every one, as it is unavoidable and necessary, so is it always profitable. He remembers besides that whatsoever partakes of reason is akin unto him, and that to care for all men generally is agreeing to the nature of a man. But as for honor and praise, that they ought not generally to be admitted and accepted of from all, but from such only who live according to nature. As for them that do not, what manner of men they be at home or abroad, day or night, how condition themselves with what manner of conditions, or with men of what conditions they moil and pass away the time together, he knoweth, and remembers right well. He therefore regards not such praise and approbation as proceeding from them who cannot like and approve themselves. Do nothing against thy will, nor contrary to the community, nor without due examination, nor with reluctancy. Affect not to set out thy thoughts with curious neat language. Be neither a great talker, nor a great undertaker. Moreover, let thy God that is in thee to rule over thee find by thee that he hath to do with a man, an aged man, a sociable man, a Roman, a prince, one that hath ordered his life as one that expecteth as it were nothing but the sound of the trumpet, sounding a retreat to depart out of this life with all expedition.
One who for his word or actions neither needs an oath nor any man to be a witness, to be cheerful and to stand in no need either of other men's help or attendance, or of that rest and tranquility which thou must be beholden to others for, rather like one that is straight of himself, or hath ever been straight, than one that hath been rectified. If thou shalt find anything in this mortal life better than righteousness, than truth, temperance, fortitude, and in general better than a mind contented both with those things which according to right and reason she doth, and in those which without her will and knowledge happen unto thee by the providence, if I say, thou canst find out anything better than this, apply thyself unto it with thy whole heart, and that which is best, wheresoever thou dost find it, enjoy freely.
But if nothing thou shalt find worthy to be preferred to that spirit which is within thee, if nothing better than to subject unto thee thine own lusts and desires, and not to give way to any fancies or imaginations before thou hast duly considered of them, nothing better than to withdraw thyself, to use Socrates his words, from all sensuality, and submit thyself unto the gods, and to have care of all men in general. If thou shalt find that all other things in comparison of this are but vile and of little moment, then give not way to any other thing, which being once though but affected and inclined unto, it will no more be in thy power without all distraction, as thou oughtest, to prefer and to pursue after that good, which is thine own and thy proper good. For it is not lawful that anything that is of another and inferior kind and nature, be it what it will, as either popular applause, or honor, or riches, or pleasures,
should be suffered to confront and contest, as it were, with that which is rational and operatively good. For all these things, if once though but for a while they begin to please, they presently prevail and pervert an man's mind, or turn a man from the right way. Do thou therefore, I say, absolutely and freely make choice of that which is best, and stick unto it. Now that they say is best, which is most profitable.
If they mean profitable to man as he is a rational man, stand thou to it and maintain it. But if they mean profitable as he is a creature, only reject it. And from this thy tenet and conclusion, keep off carefully all plausible shows and colors of external appearance, that thou mayest be able to discern things rightly. Never esteem of anything as profitable, which shall ever constrain thee either to break thy faith, or to lose thy modesty, to hate any man, to suspect, to curse, to dissemble, to lust after anything that requireth the secret of walls or veils. But he that preferreth before all things his rational part and spirit, and the sacred mysteries of virtue which issueth from it, he shall never lament and exclaim, never sigh. He shall never want either solitude or company, and which is chiefest of all, he shall live without either desire or fear. And as for life, whether for a long or short time he shall enjoy his soul thus compassed about with a body, he is altogether indifferent. For if even now he were to depart, he is as ready for it as for any other action, which may be performed with modesty and decency. For all his life long, this is his only care, that his mind may always be occupied in such intentions and objects as are proper to a rational, sociable creature.
In the mind that is once truly disciplined and purged, thou canst not find anything, either foul or impure, or as it were festered, nothing that is either servile or affected, no partial tie, no malicious averseness, nothing obnoxious, nothing concealed. The life of such an one death can never surprise as imperfect, as of an actor that should die before he had ended, or the play itself were at an end, a man might speak. Use thine opiniative faculty with all honor and respect, for in her indeed is all, that thy opinion do not beget in thy understanding anything contrary to either nature or the proper constitution of a rational creature. The end and object of a rational constitution is, to do nothing rashly, to be kindly affected towards men, and in all things willingly to submit unto the gods. Casting therefore all other things aside, keep thyself to these few, and remember withal that no man properly can be said to live more than that which is now present, which is but a moment of time. Whatsoever is besides, either is already past or uncertain.
The time therefore that any man doth live is but a little, and the place where he liveth is but a very little corner of the earth. And the greatest fame that can remain of a man after his death, even that is but little, and that too, such as it is whilst it is by the succession of silly mortal men preserved, who likewise shall shortly die, and even whilst they live know not what in very deed they themselves are, and much less can know one who long before is dead and gone. To these ever-present helps and mementos, let one more be added, ever to make a particular description and delineation, as it were, of every object that presents itself to thy mind, that thou mayest wholly and thoroughly contemplate it in its own proper nature, bare and naked, wholly and severally, divided into its several parts and quarters, and then by thyself in thy mind to call both it and those things of which it does consist and in which it shall be resolved, by their own proper true names and appellations. For there is nothing so effectual to beget true magnanimity as to be able truly and methodically to examine and consider all things that happen in this life, and so to penetrate into their natures, that at the same time this also may concur in our apprehensions. What is the true use of it, and what is the true nature of this universe to which it is useful?
How much in regard of the universe may it be esteemed? How much in regard of man, a citizen of the supreme city, of which all other cities in the world are as it were but houses and families? What is this that now my fancy is set upon? Of what things doth it consist? How long can it last? Which of all the virtues is the proper virtue for this present use, as whether meekness, fortitude, truth, faith, sincerity, contentation, or any of the rest? Of everything, therefore, thou must use thyself to say, This immediately comes from God. This by that fatal connection and concatenation of things, or, which almost comes to one, by some coincidental casualty. And as for this, it proceeds from my neighbor, my kinsman, my fellow, through his ignorance indeed, because he knows not what is truly natural unto him. But I know it, and therefore carry myself towards him according to the natural law of fellowship, that is, kindly and justly. As for those things that of themselves are altogether indifferent, as in my best judgment I conceive everything to deserve more or less, so I carry myself towards it.
If thou shalt intend that which is present, following the rule of right and reason carefully, solidly, meekly, and shalt not intermix any other businesses, but shall study this only, to preserve thy spirit unpolluted and pure, and shall cleave unto him without either hope or fear of anything, in all things that thou shalt either do or speak, contenting thyself with heroical truth, thou shalt live happily, and from this there is no man that can hinder thee. As physicians and chirurgeons always their instruments ready at hand for all sudden cures, so have thou always thy dogmata in a readiness for the knowledge of things both divine and human. And whatsoever thou dost, even in the smallest things that thou dost, thou must ever remember that mutual relation and connection that is between these two things, divine and things human. For without relation unto God thou shalt never speed in any worldly actions, nor on the other side in any divine, without some respect had to things human. Be not deceived, for thou shalt never live to read thy moral commentaries, nor the acts of the famous Romans and Grecians, nor those excerpta from several books, all which thou hadst provided and laid up for thyself against thine old age. Hasten therefore to an end, and giving over all vain hopes, help thyself in time if thou carest for thyself, as thou oughtest to do.
To steal, to sow, to buy, to be at rest, to see what is to be done, which is not seen by the eyes, but by another kind of sight. What these words mean, and how many ways to be understood, they do not understand. The body, the soul, the understanding. As the senses naturally belong to the body, and the desires and affections to the soul, so do the dogmatas to the understanding. To be capable of fancies and imaginations is common to man and beast. To be violently drawn and moved by the lusts and desires of the soul is proper to wild beasts and monsters, such as Phalaris and Nero were. To follow reason for ordinary duties and actions is common to them also, who believe not that there be any gods, and for their advantage would make no conscience to betray their own country, and who when once the doors be shut upon them, dare do anything. If therefore all things else be common to these likewise, it follows that for a man to like and embrace all things that happen and are destinated unto him, and not to trouble and molest that spirit which is seated in the temple of his own breast, with a multitude of vain fancies and imaginations, but to keep him propitious, and to obey him as a god, never either speaking anything contrary to truth, or doing anything contrary to justice, is the only true property of a good man.
And such a one, though no man should believe that he liveth as he doth, either sincerely and conscientiously, or cheerful and contentedly, yet he is neither with any man at all angry for it, nor diverted by it from the way that leadeth to the end of his life, through which a man must pass pure, ever ready to depart, and willing of himself, without any compulsion, to fit and accommodate himself to his proper lot and portion. Book 4. That inward mistress part of man, if it be in its own true natural temper, is towards all worldly chances and events ever so disposed and affected, that it will easily turn and apply itself to that which may be, and is within its own power to compass, when that cannot be which at first it intended. For it never doth absolutely addict and apply itself to any one object, but whatsoever it is that it doth now intend and prosecute, it doth prosecute it with exception and reservation, so that whatsoever it is that falls out contrary to its first intentions, even that afterwards it makes its proper object, even as the fire when it prevails upon those things that are in his way, by which things indeed a little fire would have been quenched, but a great fire doth soon turn to its own nature, and so consume whatsoever comes in his way. Yea, by those very things it is made greater and greater.
Let nothing be done rashly and at random, but all things according to the most exact and perfect rules of art. They seek for themselves private retiring places, as country villages, the seashore, mountains. Yea, thou thyself art wont to long much after such places. But all this thou must know proceeds from simplicity in the highest degree. At what time soever thou wilt, it is in thy power to retire into thyself, and to be at rest, and free from all businesses. A man cannot any whither retire better than to his own soul, he especially who was beforehand provided of such things within, which whensoever he doth withdraw himself to look in, may presently afford unto him perfect ease and tranquillity. By tranquillity I understand a decent orderly disposition and carriage, free from all confusion and tumultuousness. Afford then thyself this retiring continually, and thereby refresh and renew thyself. Let these precepts be brief and fundamental, which as soon as thou dost call them to mind, may suffice thee to purge thy soul thoroughly, and to send thee away well pleased with those things whatsoever they be, which now again after this short withdrawing of thy soul into herself thou dost return unto. For what is it that thou art offended at? Can it be at the wickedness of men, when thou dost call to mind this conclusion, that all reasonable creatures are made one for another?
And that it is part of justice to bear with them, and that it is against their wills that they offend? And how many already, who once likewise prosecuted their enmities, suspected, hated, and fiercely contended, are now long ago stretched out and reduced unto ashes? It is time for thee to make an end. As for those things which among the common chances of the world happen unto thee as thy particular lot and portion, canst thou be displeased with any of them, when thou dost call that our ordinary dilemma to mind, either a Providence or Democritus's atoms, and with it whatsoever we brought to prove that the whole world is as it were one city? And for thy body, what canst thou fear, if thou dost consider that thy mind and understanding, when once it hath recollected itself, and knows its own power, hath in this life and breath, whether it runs smoothly and gently, or whether harshly and rudely, no interest at all, but is altogether indifferent, and whatsoever else thou hast heard and assented unto concerning either pain or pleasure. But the care of thine honor and reputation will perhaps distract thee.
How can that be, if thou dost look back, and consider both how quickly all things that are forgotten, and what an immense chaos of eternity was before, and will follow after all things, and the vanity of praise, and the inconstancy and variableness of human judgments and opinions, and the narrowness of the place wherein it is limited and circumscribed? For the whole earth is but as one point, and of it this inhabited part of it is but a very little part, and of this part how many in number, and what manner of men are they that will commend thee? What remains then, but that thou often put in practice this kind of retiring of thyself to this little part of thyself, and above all things keep thyself from distraction, and intend not anything vehemently, but be free and consider all things as a man whose proper object is virtue, as a man whose true nature is to be kind and sociable, as a citizen, as a mortal creature. Among other things which to consider and look into thou must use to withdraw thyself, let those two be among the most obvious and at hand. 1. That the things or objects themselves reach not unto the soul, but stand without still and quiet, and that it is from the opinion only which is within, that all the tumult and all the trouble doth proceed.
The next, that all these things which now thou seest shall within a very little while be changed, and be no more, and ever call to mind how many changes and alterations in the world thou thyself hast already been an eyewitness of in thy time. This world is mere change, and this life, opinion. If to understand and to be reasonable be common unto all men, then is that reason, for which we are termed reasonable, common unto all. If reason is general, then is that reason also, which prescribes what is to be done and what not, common unto all. If that, then law. If law, then are we fellow citizens. If so, then are we partners in some one commonweal. If so, then the world is as it were a city. For which other commonweal is it that all men can be said to be members of? From this common city it is, that understanding, reason, and law is derived unto us, for from whence else? For as that which in me is earthly I have from some common earth, and that which is moist from some other element is imparted, as my breath and life has its proper fountain, and that likewise which is dry and fiery in me. For there is nothing which doth not proceed from something, as also there is nothing that can be reduced unto mere nothing. So also is there some common beginning, from whence my understanding hath proceeded.
As generation is, so also death, a secret of nature's wisdom, a mixture of elements resolved into the same elements again, a thing surely which no man ought to be ashamed of, in a series of other fateful events and consequences, which a rational creature is subject unto,
not improper or incongruous, nor contrary to the natural and proper constitution of man himself. Such and such things, from such and such causes, must of necessity proceed. He that would not have such things to happen is as he that would have the fig tree grow without any sap or moisture. In sum, remember this, that within a very little while both thou and he shall both be dead, and after a little while more, not so much as your names and memories shall be remaining. Let opinion be taken away, and no man will think himself wronged. If no man shall think himself wronged, then is there no more any such thing as wrong. That which makes not man himself the worse cannot make his life the worse, neither can it hurt him either inwardly or outwardly. It was expedient in nature that it should be so, and therefore necessary. Whatsoever doth happen in the world doth happen justly, and so if thou dost well take heed, thou shalt find it. I say not only in right order by a series of inevitable consequences, but according to justice, and as it were by way of equal distribution, according to the true worth of everything.
Continue then to take notice of it, as thou hast begun. And whatsoever thou dost, do it not without this proviso, that it be a thing of that nature that a good man, as the word good is properly taken, may do it. This observe carefully in every action. Conceive no such things as he that wrongeth thee conceiveth, or would have thee to conceive, but look into the matter itself, and see what it is in very truth. These two rules thou must have always in a readiness. First, do nothing at all but what reason, proceeding from that regal and supreme part, shall for the good and benefit of men suggest unto thee. And secondly, if any man that is present shall be able to rectify thee, or to turn thee from some erroneous persuasion, that thou be always ready to change thy mind, and this change to proceed, not from any respect of any pleasure or credit thereon depending, but always from some probable apparent ground of justice, or of some public good thereby to be furthered, or from some other such inducement. Hast thou reason? I have. Why then makest thou not use of it? For if thy reason do her part, what more canst thou require?
As a part hitherto thou hast had a particular subsistence, and now shalt thou vanish away into the common substance of him who first begot thee, or rather thou shalt be resumed again into that original rational substance out of which all others have issued and are propagated. Many small pieces of frankincense are set upon the same altar. One drops first and is consumed, another after, and it comes all to one. Within 10 days, if so happen, thou shalt be esteemed a god of them who now, if thou shalt return to the dogmata and to the honoring of reason, will esteem of thee no better than of a mere brute and of an ape. Not as though thou hadst thousands of years to live. Death hangs over thee. Whilst yet thou livest, whilst thou mayest, be good. Now much time and leisure doth he gain, who is not curious to know what his neighbor hath said, or hath done, or hath attempted, but only what he doth himself, that it may be just and holy. Or, to express it in Agatha's words, not to look about upon the evil conditions of others, but to run on straight in the line, without any loose and extravagant agitation. He who is greedy of credit and reputation after his death doth not consider that they themselves by whom he is remembered shall soon after every one of them be dead, and they likewise that succeed those, until at last all memory, which hitherto by the succession of men admiring and soon after dying hath had its course, be quite extinct. But suppose that both they that shall remember thee, and thy memory with them should be immortal, what is that to thee? I will not say to thee after thou art dead, but even to thee living, what is thy praise? But only for a secret and political consideration, which we call oikonomion, or dispensation. For as for that it is the gift of nature, whatsoever is commended in thee, what might be objected from thence, let that now that we are upon another consideration be omitted as unseasonable. That which is fair and goodly, whatsoever it be, and in what respect soever it be, that it is fair and goodly, it is so of itself, and terminates in itself, not admitting praise as a part or member. That therefore which is praised is not thereby made either better or worse. This I understand even of those things that are commonly called fair and good, as those which are commended either for the matter itself or for curious workmanship.
As for that which is truly good, what can it stand in need of more than either justice or truth, or more than either kindness and modesty? Which of all those either becomes good or fair because commended, or dispraised suffers any damage? Doth the emerald become worse in itself, or more vile if it be not commended? Doth gold, or ivory, or purple? Is there anything that doth, though never so common as a knife, a flower, or a tree? If so be that the souls remain after death, say they that will not believe it, how is the air from all eternity able to contain them? How is the earth, say I, ever from that time able to contain the bodies of them that are buried? For as here the change and resolution of dead bodies into another kind of subsistence, whatsoever it be, makes place for other dead bodies, so the souls after death transferred into the air, after they have conversed there a while, are either by way of transmutation, or transfusion, or conflagration, received again into that original rational substance, from which all others do proceed, and so give way to those souls who before coupled and associated unto bodies, now begin to subsist single. This, upon a supposition that the souls after death do for a while subsist single, may be answered.
And here, besides the number of bodies, so buried and contained by the earth, we may further consider the number of several beasts eaten by us men and by other creatures. For notwithstanding that such a multitude of them is daily consumed, and as it were buried in the bodies of the eaters, yet is the same place and body able to contain them, by reason of their conversion, partly into blood, partly into air and fire. What in these things is the speculation of truth? To divide things into that which is passive and material, and that which is active and formal. Not to wander out of the way, but upon every motion and desire to perform that which is just, and ever to be careful to attain to the true natural apprehension of every fancy that presents itself. Whatsoever is expedient unto thee, O world, is expedient unto me. Nothing can either be unseasonable unto me or out of date, which unto thee is seasonable. Whatsoever thy seasons bear shall ever by me be esteemed as happy fruit and increase. O nature, from thee are all things, in thee all things subsist, and to thee they all tend. Could he say of Athens, thou lovely city of Cecrops, and shalt not thou say of the world, thou lovely city of God? They will say commonly, meddle not with many things, if thou wilt live cheerfully.
Certainly there is nothing better than for a man to confine himself to necessary actions, to such and so many only, as reason in a creature that knows itself born for society will command and enjoin. This will not only procure that cheerfulness, which from the goodness, but that also which from the paucity of actions doth usually proceed. For since it is so, that most of those things which we either speak or do are unnecessary, if a man shall cut them off, it must needs follow that he shall thereby gain much leisure and save much trouble, and therefore at every action a man must privately by way of admonition suggest unto himself, what, may not this that now I go about be of the number of unnecessary actions? Neither must he use himself to cut off actions only, but thoughts and imaginations also that are unnecessary. For so will unnecessary consequent actions the better be prevented and cut off. Try also how a good man's life, of one who is well pleased with those things whatsoever, which among the common changes and chances of this world fall to his own lot and share, and can live well contented and fully satisfied in the justice of his own proper present action, and in the goodness of his disposition for the future, will agree with thee. Thou hast had experience of that other kind of life. Make now trial of this also.
Trouble not thyself any more henceforth. Reduce thyself unto perfect simplicity. Doth any man offend? It is against himself that he doth offend. Why should it trouble thee? Hath anything happened unto thee? It is well, whatsoever it be. It is that which of all the common chances of the world from the very beginning in the series of all other things that have or shall happen was destinated and appointed unto thee. To comprehend all in a few words, our life is short. We must endeavor to gain the present time with best discretion and justice. Use recreation with sobriety. Either this world is a cosmos or comely peace, because all disposed and governed by certain order, or if it be a mixture, though confused, yet still it is a comely peace. For is it possible that in thee there should be any beauty at all, and that in the whole world there should be nothing but disorder and confusion, and all things in it too by natural different properties one from another differenced and distinguished, and yet all through diffused and by natural sympathy one to another united as they are? A black or malignant disposition, an effeminate disposition, and hard, inexorable disposition, a wild, inhuman disposition, a sheepish disposition, a childish disposition, a blockish, a false, a scurril, a fraudulent, a tyrannical. What then?
If he be a stranger in the world that knows not the things that are in it, why not be a stranger as well that wonders at the things that are done in it? He is a true fugitive that flies from reason, by which men are sociable. He blind, who cannot see with the eyes of his understanding. He poor, that stands in need of another, and hath not in himself all things needful for this life. He an apostome of the world, who by being discontented with those things that happen unto him in the world, doth as it were apostatize, and separate himself from common nature's rational administration. For the same nature it is that brings this unto thee, whatsoever it be, that first brought thee into the world. He raises sedition in the city, who by irrational actions withdraws his own soul from that one and common soul of all rational creatures. There is who without so much as a coat, and there is who without so much as a book doth put philosophy in practice. I am half naked, neither have I bread to eat, and yet I depart not from reason, saith one. But I say, I want the food of good teaching and instructions, and yet I depart not from reason.
What art and profession soever thou hast learned, endeavor to affect it, and comfort thyself in it, and pass the remainder of thy life as one who from his whole heart commits himself, and whatsoever belongs unto him, unto the gods. And as for men, carry not thyself either tyrannically or servilely towards any. Consider in my mind, for example's sake, the times of Vespasian. Thou shalt see but the same things, some marrying, some bringing up children, some sick, some dying, some fighting, some feasting, some merchandising, some tilling, some flattering, some boasting, some suspecting, some undermining, some wishing to die, some fretting and murmuring at their present estate, some wooing, some hoarding, some seeking after magistracies, and some after kingdoms. And is not that their age quite over and ended? Again, consider now the times of Trajan. There likewise thou seest the very selfsame things, and that age also is now over and ended. In the like manner, consider other periods, both of times and of whole nations, and see how many men, after they had with all their might and main intended and prosecuted some one worldly thing or other, did soon after drop away, and were resolved into the elements.
But especially thou must call to mind them, whom thou yourself in thy lifetime hast known much distracted about vain things, and in the meantime neglecting to do that, and closely and inseparably, as fully satisfied with it, to adhere unto it, which their own proper constitution did require. And here thou must remember, that thy carriage in every business must be according to the worth and due proportion of it, for so shalt thou not easily be tired out and vexed, if thou shalt not dwell upon small matters longer than is fitting. Those words which once were common and ordinary are now become obscure and obsolete, and so the names of men once commonly known and famous are now become in a manner obscure and obsolete names. Camillus, Caeso, Valesius, Leonatus, not long after Scipio, Cato, then Augustus, then Adrianus, then Antoninus Pius, all these in a short time will be out of date, and as things of another world, as it were, become fabulous. And this I say of them who once shone as the wonders of their ages, for as for the rest, no sooner are they expired, than with them all their fame and memory. And what is it then that shall always be remembered? All is vanity. What is it that we must bestow our care and diligence upon?
Even upon this only, that our minds and wills be just, that our actions be charitable, that our speech be never deceitful, or that our understanding be not subject to error, that our inclination be always set to embrace whatsoever shall happen unto us, as necessary, as usual, as ordinary, as flowing from such a beginning and such a fountain, from which both thou thyself and all things are. Willingly, therefore, and wholly surrender up thyself unto that fatal concatenation, yielding up thyself unto the fates, to be disposed of at their pleasure. Whatsoever is now present, and from day to day hath its existence, all objects of memories, and the minds and memories themselves, incessantly consider. All things that are have their being by change and alteration. Use thyself, therefore, often to meditate upon this, that the nature of the universe delights in nothing more than in altering those things that are, and in making others like unto them. So that we may say that whatsoever is but as it were the seed of that which shall be. For if thou think that that only is seed which either the earth or the womb receiveth, thou art very simple.
Thou art now ready to die, and yet hast thou not attained to that perfect simplicity. Thou art yet subject to many troubles and perturbations, not yet free from all fear and suspicion of external accidents, nor yet either so meekly disposed towards all men as thou shouldest, or so affected as one whose only study and only wisdom is to be just in all his actions. Behold and observe what is the state of their rational part, and those that the world doth account wise, see what things they fly and are afraid of, and what things they hunt after. In another man's mind and understanding thy evil cannot subsist, nor in any proper temper or distemper of the natural constitution of thy body, which is but, as it were, the coat or cottage of thy soul. Wherein then but in that part of thee wherein the conceit and apprehension of any misery can subsist? Let not that part therefore admit any such conceit, and then all is well. Though thy body, which is so near it, should either be cut or burnt, or suffer any corruption or putrefaction, yet let that part to which it belongs to judge of these be still at rest. That is, let her judge this, that whatsoever it is that equally may happen to a wicked man and to a good man, is neither good nor evil.
For that which happens equally to him that lives according to nature, and to him that doth not, is neither according to nature, nor against it, and by consequent, neither good nor bad. Ever consider and think upon the world as being but one living substance, and having but one soul, and how all things in the world are terminated into one sensitive power, and are done by one general motion, as it were, and deliberation of that one soul, and how all things that are concur in the cause of one another's being, and by what manner of connection and concatenation all things happen. What art thou, that better and divine part accepted, but as Epictetus said well, a wretched soul, appointed to carry a carcass up and down? To suffer change can be no hurt, as no benefit it is, by change to attain to being. The age and time of the world is as it were a flood and swift current, consisting of the things that are brought to pass in the world. For as soon as anything hath appeared and is passed away, another succeeds, and that also will presently out of sight. Whatsoever doth happen in the world is in the course of nature as usual and ordinary as a rose in the spring, and fruit in summer. Of the same nature is sickness and death, slander and lying in wait, and whatsoever else ordinarily doth unto fools use to be occasion either of joy or sorrow.
That whatsoever it is that comes after doth always very naturally, and as it were familiarly, follow upon that which was before. For thou must consider the things of the world not as a loose, independent number, consisting merely of necessary events, but as a discrete connection of things orderly and harmoniously disposed. There is then to be seen in the things of the world not a bare succession, but an admirable correspondence and affinity. Let that of Heraclitus never be out of thy mind, that the death of earth is water, and the death of water is air, and the death of air is fire, and so on the contrary. Remember him also who was ignorant whither the way did lead, and how that reason, being the thing by which all things in the world are administered, and which men are continually and most inwardly conversant with, yet is the thing which ordinarily they are most in opposition with, and how those things which daily happen among them cease not daily to be strange unto them, and that we should not either speak or do anything as men in their sleep, by opinion and bare imagination, for then we think we speak and do, and that we must not be as children who follow their father's example, for best reason alleging their bare kathoti pareliphamen, or as by successive tradition from our forefathers we have received it.
Even as if any of the gods should tell thee, thou shalt certainly die tomorrow, or next day, thou wouldst not, except thou wert extremely base and pusillanimous, take it for a great benefit, rather to die the next day after than tomorrow, for alas, what is the difference? So for the same reason, think it no great matter to die rather many years after than the very next day. Let it be thy perpetual meditation, how many physicians who once looked so grim and so theatrically shrunk their brows upon their patients are dead and gone themselves. How many astrologers, after that in great ostentation they had foretold the death of some others, how many philosophers, after so many elaborate tracts and volumes concerning either mortality or immortality, how many brave captains and commanders, after the death and slaughter of so many, how many kings and tyrants, after they had with such horror and insolency abused their power upon men's lives, as though themselves had been immortal, how many, that I may so speak, whole cities, both men and towns, Helice, Pompeii, Herculaneum, and others innumerable, are dead and gone. Run them over also whom thou thyself, one after another, hast known in thy time to drop away. Such and such a one took care of such and such a one's burial, and soon after was buried himself. So one, so another, and all things in a short time.
For herein lieth all indeed, ever to look upon all worldly things as things for their continuance, that are but for a day, and for their worth most vile and contemptible. As for example, what is man? That which but the other day when he was conceived was vile snivel, and within few days shall be either an embalmed carcass or mere ashes. Thus must thou, according to truth and nature, throughly consider how man's life is but for a very moment of time, and so depart meek and contented, even as if a ripe olive falling should praise the ground that bare her, and give thanks to the tree that begat her. Thou must be like a promontory of the sea, against which though the waves beat continually, yet it both itself stands, and about it are those swelling waves stilled and quieted. O wretched I, to whom this mischance is happened! Nay, happy I, to whom this thing being happened, I can continue without grief, neither wounded by that which is present, nor in fear of that which is to come. For as for this, it might have happened unto any man, but any man having such a thing befallen him could not have continued without grief. Why then should that rather be an unhappiness than this a happiness? But however, canst thou, O man,
Term that unhappiness, which is no mischance to the nature of man. Canst thou think that a mischance to the nature of man, which is not contrary to the end and will of his nature? What then hast thou learned is the will of man's nature? Doth that then which had happened unto thee hinder thee from being just, or magnanimous, or temperate, or wise, or circumspect, or true, or modest, or free, or from anything else of all those things in the present enjoying and possession whereof the nature of man, as then enjoying all that is proper unto her, is fully satisfied? Now to conclude, upon all occasion of sorrow, remember henceforth to make use of this dogma, that whatsoever it is that hath happened unto thee is in very deed no such thing of itself as a misfortune, but that to bear it generously is certainly great happiness. It is but an ordinary coarse one, yet it is a good effectual remedy against the fear of death, for a man to consider in his mind the examples of such who greedily and covetously, as it were, did for a long time enjoy their lives. What have they got more than they whose deaths have been untimely? Are not they themselves dead at the last, as Cadicians, Fabius, Julianus Lepidus, or any other who in their lifetime, having buried many, were at the last buried themselves?
The whole space of any man's life is but little, and as little as it is, with what troubles, with what manner of dispositions, and in the society of how wretched a body must it be passed.
Let it be therefore unto thee altogether as a matter of indifferency. For if thou shalt look backward, behold, what an infinite chaos of time doth present itself unto thee, and as infinite a chaos if thou shalt look forward. In that which is so infinite, what difference can there be between that which liveth but 3 days, and that which liveth 3 ages? Let thy course ever be the most compendious way. The most compendious is that which is according to nature. That is, in all both words and deeds, ever to follow that which is most sound and perfect. For such a resolution will free a man from all trouble, strife, dissembling, and ostentation.